There are people in every organization, every industry, every field who operate under different rules than everyone else. They get opportunities others don't. They're consulted on important decisions. Their opinions carry weight. When they speak, people listen. When they move to a different company, multiple competitors try to recruit them. They have leverage that most workers never achieve, not because they're politically savvy or well-connected, though some are, but because they've made themselves genuinely, measurably valuable in ways that are difficult to replace. This audiobook is about how to become one of those people. The promise is not that you'll become famous or wealthy, though both are possible outcomes. The promise is something more fundamental and more reliable, that you will develop skills, knowledge, and capabilities so rare and so valuable that organizations will compete for your time, your expertise, and your contribution. That you will build what economist Tyler Cowen calls career capital, the accumulated assets of skill, reputation, and relationships that give you control over your professional life. Most career advice operates from a fundamentally backwards premise. It tells you to follow your passion, find work you love, pursue your dreams, and the success will follow. This sounds inspiring, and for a tiny fraction of people, it actually works. But for most people, it produces frustration, disappointment, and years spent searching for a perfect job that doesn't exist while their actual skills stagnate. The approach we're going to explore inverts that logic entirely. Instead of asking what the world can offer you, so ask what you can offer the world. Instead of searching for the perfect role, build the skills that make you perfect for valuable roles. Instead of hoping to be discovered, make yourself so good that discovery becomes inevitable. This is not selfless altruism. This is strategic self-interest. Because the single most reliable path to professional autonomy, satisfaction, and security is to become genuinely excellent at something that matters. The concept comes most clearly from Cal Newport's book, So Good They Can't Ignore You, which challenges the conventional wisdom of passion-driven career advice. Newport argues, backed by research and case studies across multiple fields, that passion follows mastery more often than mastery follows passion. People don't love their work because they found the perfect job. They love their work because they got very good at something valuable. And being very good at valuable things produces autonomy, respect, impact, and opportunity, which are the actual ingredients of work satisfaction. This framework explains why some people seem to have dream careers while others perpetually struggle. It's not that the successful people had better luck or clearer passions. It's that they built rare and valuable skills through deliberate practice, accumulated career capital, and then leveraged that capital to craft roles and working conditions that others envy. The dream job is not found, it's built. And it's built through years of developing capabilities that the market values highly and can't easily replace. But here's what makes this approach different from generic advice to work hard or be excellent. It's strategic. Not all skills are equally valuable. Not all effort produces the same return. Not all excellence is rewarded the same way. The people who become too valuable to ignore don't just work hard. They work hard on the right things, in the right ways, with clear awareness of what creates value in their field and what doesn't. They understand that value is determined by supply and demand. Skills that are common and easy to acquire are cheap. Skills that are rare and difficult to master command premium compensation and extraordinary opportunity. They understand that impact matters more than effort. Solving expensive problems is worth more than solving easy ones, regardless of how much effort each requires. Whilst they understand that reputation compounds. Every demonstration of competence makes the next opportunity more likely, creating a flywheel effect that accelerates over time. They also understand something that most people miss, that becoming valuable is not just about technical skill. It's about judgment, taste, reliability, the ability to work with others, the capacity to communicate complex ideas clearly, and the discipline to deliver consistently excellent results over time. Technical skill is necessary but insufficient. The truly irreplaceable combine deep expertise with the softer capabilities that make expertise useful in organizational contexts. Over the next 10 chapters, we're going to dismantle every dimension of professional value building. We'll examine why some people rise while others plateau, Summary: how to identify and develop rare and valuable skills, why deep work is the competitive advantage of the knowledge economy, how to accumulate career capital systematically, why the craftsman mindset beats the passion mindset, how to make yourself visible to the people who matter, how to focus on solving expensive problems, how to build a reputation that creates opportunities without asking, how relationships multiply value, and finally, how to integrate all of this into a long-term strategy for becoming genuinely indispensable. By the end, you will have both the conceptual framework and the practical tools to take control of your professional trajectory, not through gimmicks or shortcuts, there are none, but through the deliberate, systematic accumulation of skills and capital that make you too valuable for organizations to overlook or lose. The market rewards value. Build enough of it and the market will find you. That's not idealism, that's economics. Let's begin. Chapter 1: The Value Economy. Why some people rise while others plateau. Walk into any organization, a corporation, a university, a hospital, a creative agency, and you will observe a predictable distribution of value and recognition. A small number of people seem to accumulate opportunities, influence, and compensation at rates far exceeding their peers. The majority work hard, produce decent results, and advance incrementally if at all. And a significant fraction struggle to maintain relevance as their skills become obsolete or their roles become automated. What separates these groups is not intelligence, education, or work ethic. Those are table stakes. Everyone at a certain level is smart and hardworking. What separates them is the accumulation of career capital, the rare and valuable skills, reputation, and in relationships that make someone genuinely difficult to replace. Understanding how career capital works requires understanding the fundamental economics of value. In any market, value is determined by two factors: how much someone is willing to pay for something and how difficult it is to find elsewhere. Apply this to professional skills. A skill that is both highly demanded and in short supply commands premium compensation. A skill that is either low demand or high supply commands commodity wages. Consider two software developers. Both work 40 hours a week. Both are competent. Developer A knows the common programming languages that every bootcamp teaches. Their skills are solid but widely available. One, Developer B has spent years mastering a specialized domain, perhaps machine learning infrastructure or distributed systems, that very few people understand deeply. When a company needs Developer A's skills, they have thousands of candidates to choose from. When they need Developer B's skills, they have dozens at most. Developer B has more career capital. Developer B has leverage. The same pattern appears in every field. The lawyer who can do standard contract work is competing with thousands of others and with increasing automation. The lawyer who can navigate complex international regulatory frameworks for pharmaceutical companies is competing with a handful of specialists globally. The writer who can produce clean blog posts is competing with millions of people and increasingly with AI. The writer who can translate dense research into compelling narrative that changes how people think is competing with a tiny fraction of that number. But rarity alone is insufficient. The skill must also be valuable, meaning it must solve problems that organizations are willing to pay to have solved. You could spend 10 years becoming the world's greatest expert in an obscure historical period or a dying technology. You would be rare. You would not be valuable because there's no market demand for that expertise. Career capital requires both rarity and value, supply and demand. This creates what economists call a power law distribution. In most fields, a small percentage of practitioners capture a disproportionate share of the rewards. The top performers earn not 10 or 20% more than average performers, but 10 or 20 times more. This is not because they work 10 times harder. It's because they've developed capabilities that exist at the intersection of high value and low supply. The question then becomes, how do you position yourself in that intersection? How do you identify which skills to develop? And how do you develop them to a level that creates genuine scarcity? The first step is awareness of the market you're operating in. What does your industry actually reward? Not what it says it rewards, what it pays for. Many industries claim to value creativity, leadership, or innovation. What they actually pay for is predictable revenue, cost reduction, or risk mitigation. The person who understands the difference can focus their development on skills that align with what's actually rewarded rather than what's publicly celebrated. The second step is strategic skill selection. Not all skills compound. Some skills become obsolete as technology changes. Some skills are easily learned and quickly saturated. The skills worth developing are the ones that are difficult to master, remain relevant across technological shifts, and become more valuable with experience. Deep technical expertise in foundational domains, complex problem solving that requires judgment and context, skills that combine multiple disciplines in unusual ways. The third step is deliberate practice over long-time horizons. Rare and valuable skills are not acquired in months or even a couple of years. They're built through thousands of hours of focused effort, feedback, and refinement. This is why most people plateau. They work hard, but they don't work deliberately on the specific capabilities that create scarcity. They practice their job, but they don't practice getting better at their job. The distinction is everything. There's also the dimension of leverage. Career capital is not just what you know, it's what you can do with what you know. The person who can apply their expertise to create measurable impact, revenue generated, costs reduced, risks avoided, capabilities built, has more capital than the person with equivalent knowledge but no track record of results. Organizations pay for outcomes, not expertise. Expertise is only valuable insofar as it produces outcomes. This is why some people rise rapidly, while others plateau despite similar credentials. The ones who rise are systematically building capital. They're choosing roles that develop rare skills. They're taking on projects that produce visible impact. They're cultivating relationships with people who can create opportunities. They're building reputations through consistent demonstration of competence. They're playing a different game than the people around them, one focused on long-term capital accumulation rather than short-term comfort or status. The people who plateau are often working just as hard, but their effort isn't translating into capital. They're developing skills that are common. They're producing work that's adequate but not distinctive. They're staying in comfortable roles that don't stretch them. They're not deliberately building anything. They're simply showing up and executing, which produces a paycheck but not leverage. The value economy rewards accumulation. Every year you spend building rare skills compounds with the previous years. Every successful project adds to your track record. Every relationship strengthens your network. Over time, the gap between those who are accumulating and those who aren't becomes enormous. Not because of any single advantage, but because of hundreds of small advantages that compound. You are operating in a value economy whether you realize it or not. The question is whether you're accumulating capital deliberately or letting it happen by accident. The ones who become too valuable to ignore do it deliberately. Chapter 2. Rare and Valuable Skills. Building what the market rewards. Not all skills are created equal. Some skills, no matter how much effort you invest in developing them, will never create significant career capital because they're too common, too easily learned, or no longer in demand. Other skills developed to even moderate levels of proficiency create immediate and sustained value because they exist at the intersection of high demand and low supply. The challenge is that the skills worth developing are often not the ones that are most visible, most discussed, or most commonly pursued. There's a disconnect between what career advice emphasizes and what the market actually rewards. Understanding this disconnect is the first step towards strategic skill development. Let's start with what makes a skill valuable. One economist, Brian Kaplan's research on education and signaling shows that much of what people learn in formal education has little direct application to workplace productivity. The value of education is often not in the knowledge transferred, but in the signal it sends about conscientiousness, intelligence, and conformity. This is why two people with identical degrees often have wildly different career trajectories. The degree was the entry ticket, but career outcomes are determined by skills developed afterward. The skills that create real value share several characteristics. First, they're difficult to learn, not impossible, but requiring sustained effort over years rather than weeks. This difficulty creates a natural barrier to entry that keeps supply limited. Anyone can learn basic Excel in a weekend. Very few people will invest the years required to master advanced statistical modeling or financial analysis. The difficulty is what creates the scarcity. Second, valuable skills are hard to automate or outsource. In an era of artificial intelligence and global labor markets, skills that can be reduced to rules or performed remotely by cheaper labor are becoming commoditized. The skills that remain valuable are the ones that require judgment, context, tacit knowledge, or in-person presence. Skills like complex negotiation, strategic thinking, leadership in ambiguous situations, creative problem solving in novel contexts, building relationships with high-stakes stakeholders. Third, valuable skills produce measurable outcomes. The market doesn't pay for effort or knowledge in the abstract, it pays for results. The skill of writing is common. The skill of writing marketing copy that reliably increases conversion rates is rare and valuable. The skill of managing projects is common. The skill of delivering complex projects on time and under budget is rare and valuable. The difference is the connection to outcomes that matter to organizations. Fourth, valuable skills often exist at intersections, combining expertise from multiple domains in ways that few others can. The engineer who also understands business strategy is more valuable than the engineer who only understands engineering. The designer who also understands psychology and data analysis is more valuable than the designer who only understands aesthetics. These combination skills are powerful because they're multiplicatively rare. If 10% of people have skill A and 10% have skill B, only 1% have both. So how do you identify which skills are worth developing in your specific context? Start by studying the people who have the careers you want. Not their job titles or their credentials, but their actual capabilities. What can they do that others cannot? What problems can they solve that create real value? What skills took them years to develop? These are clues to where career capital exists in your field. Next, look at compensation patterns. Which roles in your industry command premium pay? What capabilities do those roles require? Markets are efficient at pricing scarcity. If a certain type of expertise commands high compensation, it's usually because supply is low relative to demand. This is direct market feedback about where value exists. Pay attention to what's hard to hire for. When organizations struggle to fill a role and end up paying recruiting fees, offering above-market compensation, or promoting from within despite skill gaps, that's a signal that the required skills are scarce. Those are the skills worth developing. Also consider durability. Some skills are valuable today but won't be in 5 years because of technological change or market evolution. Other skills are durable. They remain valuable across technological shifts because they're grounded in fundamental aspects of human behavior, organizational dynamics, or unchanging physical constraints. Critical thinking, clear communication, understanding human motivation. In those systems thinking, these are durable. Specific software tools, specific technical stacks, specific industry knowledge, these are often fragile. The ideal portfolio includes both durable foundational skills and specific technical skills that are currently in high demand. The durable skills provide stability and transferability. The specific skills provide immediate market value. Together, they create both short-term leverage and long-term resilience. Once you've identified valuable skills to develop, the next question is how to develop them to a level that creates genuine scarcity. This is where most people fail. They recognize that a skill is valuable and start learning it, but they stop at the level of basic competence. They learn enough to do the job, but not enough to be exceptional. And in a competitive market, competent is not enough. Competent is the new mediocre. Getting from competent to exceptional requires deliberate practice. The systematic pushing beyond your current capability, receiving feedback, and refining based on that feedback. This is uncomfortable and unglamorous work. It's why most people plateau. They reach a level where they can perform adequately without stress, and they stay there. The ones who become too valuable to ignore keep pushing past that plateau, deliberately seeking challenges that are just beyond their current ability. This also requires time. Malcolm Gladwell popularized the 10,000-hour rule based on Anders Ericsson's research on expertise. While the exact number is less important than the principle, The principle is clear. Developing rare and valuable skills to a world-class level requires years of focused effort. There are no shortcuts. Anyone claiming otherwise is selling something. The good news is that you don't need to be world-class in everything. You need to be world-class in a few specific capabilities that matter in your domain and competent in the supporting skills around them. That focused excellence, combined with breadth of competence, is what creates professional value that's difficult to replace. Chapter 3. Deep Work. The competitive advantage of focused effort. In the knowledge economy, the ability to focus deeply on cognitively demanding work is becoming simultaneously more valuable and more rare. This creates a massive opportunity for anyone willing to cultivate the capacity for sustained concentration in an age of perpetual distraction. Cal Newport defines deep work as professional activities performed in a state of distraction-free concentration that push your cognitive capabilities to their limit. These efforts create new value, improve your skill, and are hard to replicate. In contrast, shallow work consists of non-cognitively demanding, logistical-style tasks, often performed while distracted. These efforts tend to not create much new value and are easy to replicate. Once the distinction matters because in virtually every knowledge work domain, value creation happens during deep work. The software engineer produces their most important code during deep work. The writer produces their best prose during deep work. The researcher generates insights during deep work. The strategist develops breakthrough ideas during deep work. Shallow work is necessary for execution and coordination, but it's during deep work that rare and valuable output is produced. The problem is that most modern workplaces are optimized for shallow work. Open offices, constant meetings, instant messaging tools, email norms that expect rapid responses, all of these make deep work nearly impossible during standard working hours. The average knowledge worker is interrupted or switches tasks every 3 minutes. Once interrupted, it takes an average of 23 minutes to return to the original task at full focus. Do the math. This means most people are almost never working at their full cognitive capacity. This creates a profound competitive advantage for anyone who can structure their work to include regular periods of deep focus. While most people are responding to email, attending meetings, and staying on top of Slack, the person doing deep work is producing output that's dramatically higher quality and more valuable. Over weeks, months, and years, this gap compounds into career trajectories that diverge massively. Research by Sophie Leroy on attention residue shows why context switching is so damaging to cognitive performance. When you switch from task A to task B, your attention doesn't immediately follow. A residue of your attention remains stuck thinking about task A. This residue is especially thick if your work on task A was unbounded and low intensity before switching. The more you switch, the more residue builds up, and the worse your performance becomes. Deep work eliminates attention residue by working on a single task for extended periods without switching. This allows the brain to fully engage with the problem, to hold complex information in working memory, to make connections between disparate ideas, to achieve what psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi calls flow, the state of complete absorption in a challenging task where time seems to disappear and performance peaks. The capacity for deep work is also a skill that requires training. The brain is malleable. If you spend your days in a state of perpetual distraction, your brain adapts to that mode of operation and becomes less capable of sustained focus. If you regularly practice deep work, your capacity for it increases. Like a muscle, concentration strengthens with use and atrophies with neglect. Building this capacity requires deliberate practice in environmental design. Start small. Even 30 minutes of genuinely focused work is significant if you're currently spending your days fragmented. Block time on your calendar. Treat it as inviolable. During that time, phone off, email closed, messaging apps quit, door closed or noise-canceling headphones on. Work on a single task. When your mind wanders or you feel the pull to check something, resist and return attention to the task. The resistance you feel is real. Your brain has been trained to expect regular hits of novelty and stimulation. Denying it those hits is uncomfortable, but that discomfort is where the growth happens. Every time you resist distraction and return to focus, You're strengthening the neural pathways that support concentration. Over weeks and months, it becomes easier. There's also the question of when to do deep work. For most people, cognitive capacity is highest in the morning, before decision fatigue and accumulated distractions have taken their toll. Protect your morning hours for deep work. Reserve afternoons for meetings, email, administrative tasks, and other shallow work. This aligns your most demanding work with your peak cognitive capacity. Another strategy: batching shallow work. Instead of checking email constantly throughout the day, check it 3 times: morning, midday, end of day. Process it in batches. I respond to everything that requires response, and then close it completely. Same with meetings. Batch them into specific days or specific blocks, rather than scattering them throughout your week. This creates larger uninterrupted windows for deep work. You'll encounter resistance from organizational culture. Many workplaces treat responsiveness as a virtue and interpret delayed responses as lack of commitment. This is backward. Responsiveness is cheap. Thoughtful, high-quality work is expensive and rare. The person who is always available is almost never doing deep work, which means they're almost never producing their most valuable output. The solution is not to be unresponsive, but to be strategically responsive. Communicate your deep work schedule. Let colleagues know that you'll be unavailable during certain blocks and will respond at specific times. Set clear expectations. Most people will respect this if you're producing exceptional work during your focus time. Results speak louder than availability. There's also a personal dimension. Deep work is cognitively draining. Research suggests that most people can sustain genuinely focused deep work for about 4 hours per day. Beyond that, quality degrades. This means you need to be selective about what you work on during those precious hours. Use them for the work that creates the most value. Use shallow time for everything else. Deep work is not just about productivity, it's about skill development. The deliberate practice that builds rare and valuable skills happens during deep work. You cannot develop world-class expertise while distracted. The musician must focus deeply during practice. The athlete must focus deeply during training. The knowledge worker must focus deeply during the work that develops their capabilities. Shallow work maintains skills. Deep work builds them. In a world where most people are perpetually distracted, the ability to focus deeply is becoming a superpower. It's both the mechanism through which you develop rare skills and the mode in which you apply those skills to produce exceptional results. Build this capacity. Protect it fiercely. It's the foundation of everything else. Chapter 4: Career Capital, Investing in Skills that Compound. Think of your career as a financial portfolio. Every choice you make is either an investment that builds capital or a withdrawal that depletes it. Most people don't think this way. They optimize for salary, title, or comfort in the short term without considering whether each role is building skills, relationships, and reputation that will create leverage in the future. They're making withdrawals without realizing it. Career capital is the accumulated assets that give you control over your professional life. It's the skills that are rare and valuable. It's the track record of solving important problems. It's the network of people who trust your judgment and want to work with you. It's the reputation that precedes you. Like financial capital, career capital compounds over time. The more you have, the easier it becomes to accumulate more. The concept comes from Cal Newport's research on career satisfaction and success. He found that the people with the most fulfilling careers weren't the ones who found their passion and followed it. They were the ones who built rare and valuable skills, accumulated career capital, and then spent that capital to craft roles with autonomy, competence, and relatedness. The 3 psychological needs that research shows produce workplace satisfaction. This framework inverts the traditional career narrative. Instead of finding the perfect job, you build yourself into the perfect candidate. Instead of asking what the world can offer you, you ask what you can offer the world. Instead of demanding autonomy and flexibility before you've earned it, you develop capabilities that make organizations compete to offer you those things. The mistake most people make is treating their early career as the time to cash in rather than the time to invest. They take the highest paying offer or the most prestigious title without asking whether the role will develop valuable skills. 5 years later, they're earning a good salary, but their skills haven't advanced. They have money but no capital. Money gets spent. Capital compounds. Strategic career capital accumulation means making choices that maximize learning and skill development, especially early in your career. This might mean taking a lower salary to work at a company with exceptional talent where you'll be pushed to improve. It might mean choosing a difficult project that will stretch your abilities over an easy one that lets you coast. It might mean working for a demanding manager who will give you brutal but accurate feedback, rather than a pleasant one who lets mistakes slide. These choices are investments. They're uncomfortable in the short term and pay off in the long term. The person who optimizes for comfort stays comfortable but doesn't grow. The person who optimizes for growth endures discomfort but emerges with capabilities that create opportunities the comfortable person can't access. Career capital also requires understanding the difference between skills that appreciate and skills that depreciate. Some capabilities become more valuable with time and experience. Complex problem solving, strategic thinking, deep domain expertise, understanding human and organizational dynamics. These appreciate because they're refined through years of application in varied contexts. Other capabilities depreciate. Specific technologies become outdated. Specific industry knowledge becomes obsolete as industries evolve. Narrow specializations become risky as market demand shifts. The person whose career capital is built entirely on depreciating assets wakes up one day to find their skills are no longer valuable. The person who has balanced appreciating and depreciating assets maintains relevance across career shifts. There's also the question of how you demonstrate your capital. Having valuable skills is necessary, but insufficient. Those skills must be visible to the people who can create opportunities. This is why building in public, contributing to visible projects, publishing, speaking, teaching, Marin and otherwise documenting your expertise matters. It's not self-promotion, though it can look like that. It's evidence creation. You're generating proof of capability that others can assess. Career capital compounds through reputation effects. Every successful project makes the next opportunity more likely. Every demonstration of competence strengthens your professional brand. Over time, opportunities start arriving unsolicited. Recruiters reach out. Colleagues recommend you for roles. Your network expands as people who respect your work introduce you to others. This is the flywheel effect of accumulated capital. But reputation is fragile. It can be destroyed faster than it's built. This is why consistency matters enormously. And the person who delivers exceptional work sometimes and mediocre work other times is less valuable than the person who delivers very good work reliably. Organizations need predictability. The person they can count on to execute well, meet deadlines, and produce quality output is worth more than the brilliant but erratic performer. Career capital also includes relational capital. The network of people who know your work, trust your judgment, and want to collaborate with you. This is not networking in the transactional sense of collecting business cards and LinkedIn connections. It's the accumulation of genuine professional relationships built through working together, solving problems together, and demonstrating reliability over time. These relationships become increasingly valuable as your career progresses. Early in your career, your opportunities come primarily through formal channels. Job postings, recruiters, applications. Later in your career, the best opportunities come through your network. Someone you worked with 5 years ago reaches out about a new venture. A former colleague recommends you for a role. A professional contact introduces you to a decision maker. Your network is capital that creates deal flow. Investing in career capital also means being strategic about which opportunities to pursue and which to decline. Every yes to one thing is a no to everything else. The person with growing capital can be selective. They can say no to roles that don't build skills, projects that don't align with their trajectory, or opportunities that would dilute their focus. This selectivity actually accelerates capital accumulation because it focuses effort on high-return activities. The person with little capital cannot be selective. They must take what's available. This is why building capital early is so important. It creates optionality. The more capital you have, the more you can shape your career around your strengths, interests, and goals rather than simply responding to whatever opportunities arise. Career capital is not built overnight. It's accumulated over years through hundreds of small decisions that prioritize long-term growth over short-term comfort. The time will pass regardless. The question is whether you're investing it in capabilities that compound or spending it on work that produces income, but no lasting leverage. Choose to invest. Build capital. Watch what becomes possible. Chapter 5, The Craftsman Mindset. Excellence over passion. There's a pervasive myth in modern career advice that finding and following your passion is the key to professional satisfaction and success. This narrative is so deeply embedded in our culture that questioning it feels almost heretical. And yet the evidence suggests it's not just wrong, but actively harmful to the people who believe it. The passion mindset focuses on what the world can offer you. It asks, what do I love? What am I passionate about? What brings me joy and fulfillment? Then it searches for a role that satisfies those criteria. The problem is that this mindset makes satisfaction dependent on external circumstances. The perfect job, the ideal company, the right industry. And those circumstances are rare, competitive, and often don't exist in the form the passion seeker imagines. The craftsman mindset, by contrast, focuses on what you can offer the world. It asks, what can I become excellent at? What skills can I develop to a level that creates genuine value? How can I be useful to others in ways that are rare and difficult to replace? Then it pursues mastery, knowing that the passion and satisfaction follow from being very good at something that matters. This inversion is supported by research across multiple fields. Psychologists studying workplace satisfaction find that autonomy, competence, and relatedness, not passion alignment, are the primary drivers of job satisfaction. You get autonomy by being valuable enough that organizations give you control. You get competence through deliberate skill development. You get relatedness by working with people who respect your capabilities. None of this requires finding your passion first. All of it flows from becoming excellent. Amy Wrzesniewski's research on job satisfaction at Yale studied 3 groups of workers: those who saw their work as a job, done for money, a career, done for advancement, or a calling, done for fulfillment. She found that people in the calling category were more satisfied. But here's what's remarkable. She found people in all 3 categories across all occupations, including jobs that most people wouldn't associate with callings. Some janitors saw their work as a calling. Some physicians saw theirs as just a job. The difference wasn't the occupation, it was the mindset and the level of mastery. The people who saw their work as a calling had typically developed expertise, have found ways to be creative within their role, built relationships with colleagues and clients, and gained autonomy through competence. The passion didn't lead to the career. The career, developed through a craftsman approach, led to the passion. The craftsman mindset is fundamentally about focusing on what you produce rather than how the work makes you feel. It's about striving for excellence in your output, regardless of whether you wake up every day burning with excitement about it. This sounds unglamorous because it is. Excellence is built through unglamorous repetition, deliberate practice, brutal feedback, and incremental improvement over years. There's very little room in that process for waiting to feel passionate. Consider the actual craftsman, the carpenter, the blacksmith, the potter. They don't wake up every day in love with sanding, hammering, or shaping clay. They do the work because they're committed to excellence in their craft. They care about the quality of what they produce. Over time, that commitment produces mastery, and mastery produces both pride and opportunity. The furniture maker who produces exceptional work gets commissioned for better projects, can charge higher prices, has more control over their schedule, and ultimately finds deep satisfaction in the work. Not because they were passionate about carpentry from the beginning, but because they became so good at it that the work itself became meaningful. Applying this to knowledge work means shifting your primary question from, does this work make me happy? To, am I getting better at things that matter? The first question makes you a passive consumer of career experiences, always searching for the next role that might finally be the one. The second question makes you an active builder of capability, focused on development rather than discovery. The craftsman mindset also provides clarity in decision-making. When evaluating opportunities, the passion mindset asks, will this make me happy? The answer is almost always uncertain because you can't predict how you'll feel. The craftsman mindset asks, will this make me better? That's far easier to answer. You can assess whether a role, project, or opportunity will develop valuable skills, expose you to excellent people, or challenge you to grow. If yes, it's worth pursuing. If no, decline. There's also a psychological benefit. The passion mindset creates chronic dissatisfaction because it's always comparing current reality to an imagined ideal. The craftsman mindset creates satisfaction through progress. Every day you get slightly better is a day of forward movement. The trajectory matters more than the absolute position. You might not be where you ultimately want to be, but you're further than you were last month. That's enough. This doesn't mean passion is irrelevant. Passion emerges naturally from mastery. When you become genuinely good at something, when you can solve problems others cannot, when your expertise creates real value, you start to care deeply about the work. Not because you found your calling, but because you've invested so much of yourself into developing the capability that the work becomes an expression of who you are. The passion is a result, not a prerequisite. The craftsman mindset is also more resilient to change. The person whose identity is built on passion for a specific role or industry is vulnerable when that role becomes obsolete or that industry contracts. The person whose identity is built on excellence and continuous improvement can apply that mindset to new domains. Their commitment is to the craft of getting better, not to any particular manifestation of it. Practically, adopting the craftsman mindset means measuring your days and weeks, not by how fulfilled you felt, but by how much you improved. Did you learn something new? Did you get feedback and adjust based on it? Did you push beyond your current capability? Did you produce work that was better than last week's work? These are the metrics that matter. Feelings follow progress. Progress follows deliberate effort toward excellence. Focus on what you put into the world, not what the world owes you. Commit to excellence in whatever you're doing, even if it's not your dream job. The excellence will create opportunities that passion chasing never will. And one day you'll wake up and realize that you love the work. Not because you found your passion, but because you became undeniably good at something that matters. Chapter 6. Strategic Visibility. Making sure the right people. Notice, having rare and valuable skills is necessary but not sufficient for career advancement. Those skills must be visible to the people who can create opportunities. Managers, executives, clients, potential collaborators, industry leaders. Many highly capable people plateau because they focus exclusively on doing excellent work while ignoring the equally important work of making that excellence known. This creates discomfort for people who see self-promotion as distasteful or unprofessional. The resistance is understandable. No one wants to be the person constantly broadcasting their achievements or taking credit for others' work. But there's a vast space between obnoxious self-promotion and strategic visibility. When understanding that space is essential for translating competence into opportunity, strategic visibility is not about bragging. It's about documenting, teaching, and sharing in ways that demonstrate expertise while providing value to others. The person who writes detailed analyses of problems they've solved isn't promoting themselves. They're teaching. The person who presents at conferences isn't seeking attention. They're contributing to their field's knowledge. The person who maintains an active professional presence online isn't self-promoting. They're building in public. The line between these activities and promotion is intent and utility. Are you adding value or simply seeking recognition? Research on how people advance in organizations shows that visibility to decision makers is a critical factor in promotion decisions. Managers promote people they notice, trust, and believe can handle more responsibility. If your excellent work happens invisibly, decision makers have no basis for that belief. This is why people who are merely competent but highly visible often advance faster than people who are exceptional but invisible. It's not fair. It's reality. The solution is not to become a politician. It's to ensure that your work reaches the people whose awareness matters. This requires understanding who those people are and what forms of visibility they pay attention to. For some, it's presentations at all-hands meetings. For others, it's written communication in shared channels. For others, it's direct one-on-one updates. Effective visibility matches the medium to the audience. One of the most powerful forms of visibility is solving visible problems. Some problems, even when solved well, go unnoticed because they're infrastructure or prevention. They keep bad things from happening rather than making good things happen. Other problems, when solved, are immediately obvious to leadership because they affect metrics that executives track. If you have a choice between working on equally valuable problems, choose the one whose solution will be visible to decision makers. There's also the question of attribution. In collaborative environments, credit often flows to the most visible contributor rather than the most valuable one. The person who presents the work gets remembered more than the people who did the work. This is neither right nor wrong. It's just how organizational memory functions. If you want credit for your contributions, ensure your name is attached to the output. Volunteer to present. Author the summary document. Speak at the debrief. Not to steal credit from collaborators, but to ensure you're not invisible. Teaching is another high-leverage visibility strategy. When you teach others how to do something, you're demonstrating expertise, providing value, and positioning yourself as the go-to person in that domain. This works internally through mentoring, training sessions, and documentation. It works externally through writing, speaking, and online content. The person known as the expert in X becomes the default choice when X-related opportunities arise. Writing is particularly powerful for knowledge workers. A well-written analysis, proposal, or explanation of a complex topic demonstrates clarity of thought, communication skill, and domain expertise simultaneously. It's also scalable. One document can reach dozens or hundreds of people, whereas one-on-one conversations don't scale. Many successful careers have been built on the foundation of writing thoughtful, useful content that gets shared within and beyond their organizations. Speaking engagements serve a similar function. The person who presents at industry conferences, company all-hands, or team meetings is building visibility and credibility. They're also getting practice in high-stakes communication, which is itself a valuable skill. The initial discomfort of public speaking fades with practice, and the visibility it creates compounds over time as people remember you as the person who spoke knowledgeably about a topic. Professional networks extend visibility beyond your immediate organization. Active participation in industry communities, one whether in person or online, creates awareness of your expertise among peers, potential clients, and potential employers. This is not networking in the transactional sense. It's participating genuinely in communities of practice, sharing knowledge, asking questions, and building relationships through shared interests rather than calculated networking. Social proof matters enormously in professional contexts. When someone you respect vouches for another person's expertise, that endorsement carries more weight than self-promotion ever could. This is why building relationships with respected people in your field and doing work that makes them want to endorse you is more valuable than any personal branding effort. Let others tell your story. There's also the dimension of strategic projects. Some projects, regardless of outcome, increase your visibility significantly because they're high profile, touch multiple parts of the organization, or solve problems that executives care about. Volunteer for these projects when possible, even if they're risky or difficult. The visibility from a high-profile failure is often greater than the invisibility of a low-profile success. One caution: visibility without competence is career suicide. If you make yourself visible before you're genuinely capable, people will notice you, and then notice that you're not as good as you've positioned yourself to be. This destroys credibility faster than building it. The sequence matters. Build competence first, then build visibility. Visibility amplifies whatever's underneath. Make sure what's underneath is solid. Hitting another caution: visibility is not the same as time spent on visibility activities. Some people spend more time talking about work than doing work. They're visible, but not valuable. The balance is critical. The majority of your time should be spent building genuine capability and producing excellent work. A smaller but consistent portion should be spent making that work known to people who matter. Get the ratio right. Strategic visibility is about ensuring that your value is recognized by people in positions to create opportunities. It's not manipulation, it's communication. You've invested years building skills. You're solving real problems. You're creating value. Make sure the right people know about it. Your career depends not just on what you can do, but on who knows you can do it. Chapter 7, Solving Expensive Problems. Why impact determines value. Not all problems are created equal. Some problems, when solved, create marginal value. Others, when solved, create transformative value. The difference between these categories is often not the difficulty of solving them, but the cost of leaving them unsolved. Organizations pay premium compensation to people who can solve expensive problems. Problems whose persistence costs millions in lost revenue, wasted resources, or missed opportunities. Understanding this principle is essential to building career capital strategically. You can work incredibly hard solving cheap problems and never create significant value. Or you can work on expensive problems and create value that's immediately obvious to anyone looking at the bottom line. When the market rewards the second category disproportionately, regardless of the effort involved. What makes a problem expensive? Several factors. First, scope. A problem that affects one person or one team is cheap. A problem that affects an entire division or the whole organization is expensive. Second, financial impact. A problem that costs the company $10,000 is cheap. A problem that costs $10 million is expensive. Third, strategic importance. A problem that blocks the execution of a strategic initiative is expensive, even if the immediate financial cost is low. Fourth, time sensitivity. A problem that can wait is cheap. A problem that's causing damage every day it persists is expensive. Fifth, downstream effects. A problem that creates cascading issues in other systems is more expensive than one that's self-contained. Understanding these dimensions helps you evaluate which problems are worth solving and which create the most career capital when solved. The challenge is that expensive problems are usually difficult, ambiguous, and risky. If they were easy, they'd already be solved. This is why most people avoid them. The difficult problem has no clear solution path. The ambiguous problem has no single right answer. The risky problem might not be solvable at all, or solving it might reveal other problems, or the solution might fail despite best efforts. All of these possibilities are uncomfortable. But this discomfort is precisely what creates the opportunity. The person willing to take on expensive problems, to work in ambiguity, tolerate risk, persist through difficulty, becomes valuable because most people aren't willing to do that. Competence at solving expensive problems is rare by definition, and the market rewards rarity when it's paired with value. Identifying expensive problems requires understanding the business. What metrics does leadership care about? Revenue, margins, customer retention, market share, operational efficiency. Problems that move those metrics are expensive. What strategic initiatives is the organization pursuing? Problems that block those initiatives are expensive. What keeps executives up at night? Those are expensive problems. You don't need to be senior to work on expensive problems. Junior people with initiative can identify and solve expensive problems that everyone else is too busy or too senior to notice. When the new hire who figures out why the onboarding process is inefficient and fixes it is solving an expensive problem. It's costing the company productivity across every new hire. The analyst who identifies a data quality issue that's leading to bad decisions is solving an expensive problem. The developer who fixes a performance bottleneck affecting thousands of users is solving an expensive problem. The key is to make the problem and the solution visible. Solve it quietly and the value might not be recognized. Solve it and clearly communicate the impact. Time saved, revenue preserved, risk mitigated, and the value becomes obvious. This is not bragging. It's translating your technical work into business language that decision makers can understand and value. There's also the skill of scoping problems appropriately. Some people take on problems that are too small to create significant value. Others take on problems that are too large to solve, spreading their effort across too many variables and failing to create impact. The sweet spot is problems that are expensive enough to matter, but bounded enough to be solvable within reasonable time and resources. Another dimension: some people are problem solvers and some are problem preventers. Both create value, but it's distributed differently over time. The person who fixes a crisis creates immediate, visible value. The person who prevents the crisis from happening creates invisible value that compounds over time. Organizations should value both equally, but often don't, because visible impact gets rewarded more than invisible impact. If you're focused on prevention, you need to make the prevented problems visible through metrics, projections, and clear communication of what would have happened without your intervention. The other pattern to notice: some problems are chronic and some are acute. Chronic problems persist over time and affect efficiency, morale, or quality continuously. Acute problems are sudden crises that demand immediate attention. Both are valuable to solve, but they require different skills. Chronic problems require systematic thinking, process improvement, and cultural change. Acute problems require rapid diagnosis, decisive action, and crisis management. Being good at both makes you extraordinarily valuable. There's also leverage in solving problems that others can't or won't. If a problem is technically possible for many people to solve, it's not particularly valuable to solve it. If you're the only one who can solve it, because of unique expertise, unique access, or unique willingness to take it on, solving it creates asymmetric value. This is why developing niche expertise in areas that matter to your organization is strategically powerful. You become the only person who can solve a category of expensive problems. Finally, there's the question of solution quality. Solving an expensive problem badly can be worse than not solving it at all. A solution that creates new problems, that breaks other systems, that requires constant maintenance, or that doesn't actually address the root cause is not valuable. Solution quality matters as much as problem selection. This is why excellence in execution, attention to detail, and thinking through second-order effects are so important. The value is not just in solving the problem, but in solving it well enough that it stays solved. Focus your energy on expensive problems. Develop the skills to solve them. Communicate the impact clearly. Do this consistently and your value becomes undeniable. Organizations cannot afford to lose people who solve the problems that cost them millions. Chapter 8. Building a reputation that precedes you. Your reputation is the sum of what people believe about your capabilities, character, and reliability based on observed patterns of behavior over time. It's the most durable form of career capital because it persists across jobs, companies, and even industries. And unlike skills, which require continuous practice to maintain, a strong reputation, once established, creates opportunities with minimal ongoing effort. The person with an excellent reputation receives opportunities they never asked for. Recruiters reach out about positions. Former colleagues recommend them for roles. People they've never met want to work with them based on what they've heard. Their professional network expands organically as their reputation spreads through second and third-degree connections. This is the compound effect of reputation. It creates deal flow without active effort. But reputation is also fragile. It takes years to build and can be damaged in moments through a single instance of poor judgment, dishonesty, or unreliability. This asymmetry, slow to build, quick to destroy, makes reputation both incredibly valuable and requiring constant protection. What builds a strong professional reputation? First and most fundamental, consistent delivery of high-quality work. This sounds obvious, but most people underestimate how rare consistency is. Many people produce excellent work sometimes and mediocre work other times. Organizations value predictability. The person who delivers very good work reliably is more valuable than the person who delivers extraordinary work occasionally and poor work occasionally. A consistency builds trust, and trust is the foundation of reputation. Second, meeting commitments. If you say you'll deliver something by Friday, deliver it by Friday. If circumstances change and that's not possible, communicate proactively before the deadline, not after. The person who can be counted on to do what they say they'll do builds a reputation for reliability. The person who makes commitments they don't keep, even with good reasons, builds a reputation for unreliability. Promises made and broken compound negatively just as promises made and kept compound positively. Third, quality of judgment. This is harder to observe than output quality, but equally important. People with good judgment make decisions that hold up over time. They anticipate consequences others miss. They ask the right questions, and they know when to act and when to wait. This becomes visible through the outcomes of their decisions and recommendations. Over time, people with consistently good judgment become trusted advisors, sought out not just for execution, but for strategic input. Fourth, how you handle difficulty. Everyone faces setbacks, conflicts, and failures. Your reputation is shaped significantly by how you respond to these situations. Do you blame others or take responsibility? Do you collapse under pressure or stay composed? Do you give up or persist? Do you burn bridges or maintain relationships even when things don't go your way? The person who handles adversity with grace and professionalism builds a reputation for resilience. The person who falls apart or behaves poorly under stress builds a reputation for fragility. Fifth, generosity with expertise. The person who hoards knowledge to maintain their indispensability builds a reputation for insecurity. The person who teaches freely, shares insights, and helps others succeed builds a reputation for confidence and generosity. Paradoxically, the more you give away your knowledge, the more valuable you become, because teaching demonstrates mastery and generosity creates loyalty and goodwill that compound into career capital. Sixth, integrity. This is the non-negotiable foundation. If people believe you're dishonest, manipulative, or willing to compromise ethics for advantage, no amount of competence will build a positive reputation. Integrity is binary. You either have it or you don't in others' perception. Once lost, it's nearly impossible to recover. Protect it absolutely. Never lie. Never take credit for others' work. You never throw colleagues under the bus. Never compromise on ethics even when it's costly. These principles are not just moral, they're strategic. Seventh, communication clarity. People remember whether working with you was easy or difficult. The person who communicates clearly, responds promptly, keeps relevant people informed, and makes collaboration smooth builds a reputation that makes others want to work with them again. The person who is hard to reach, unclear in communication, or creates confusion builds a reputation that makes others avoid working with them when possible. Eighth, credit sharing. In collaborative work, how you attribute credit affects reputation significantly. The person who acknowledges others' contributions, highlights team members' work, and shares success builds a reputation as a team player and leader. The person who takes credit for collaborative work or fails to acknowledge contributions builds a reputation for self-promotion that damages relationships and limits future collaboration opportunities. Managing your reputation also means being mindful of what stories people tell about you. When you're not in the room, what do former colleagues say about working with you? When your name comes up, what associations do people have? You can't control this entirely, but you can influence it through consistent behavior that gives people positive stories to tell. There's also the question of repairing damaged reputation. If you've made mistakes that hurt your reputation, the path to recovery is not explanation or excuse, but change behavior sustained over time. Actions speak louder than words, and sustained different behavior eventually overwrites previous patterns in people's minds. But this takes far longer than the damage took to create. Prevention is infinitely better than cure. Your reputation also extends beyond individual relationships to your professional brand. The public-facing perception of your expertise and values. This is shaped by your visible work, your online presence, what you write and share, how you present at events, and what others say about you publicly. Managing this requires the same principles as individual reputation: consistency, quality, integrity, and generosity. Finally, understand that reputation is permission. A strong reputation gives you permission to take risks, make mistakes, and try new things because you've built trust. A weak reputation means every error is magnified and every risk is questioned. Build the trust account through years of reliable performance, and you'll have capital to spend when you need to take chances or recover from setbacks. Your reputation is your most valuable professional asset. Guard it carefully, build it deliberately, let it precede you into rooms you haven't yet entered, and create opportunities you haven't yet imagined. Chapter 9, The Network Effect. Relationships as Multipliers. Your network is not who you know. It's who knows you, trusts you, and wants to help you succeed. And more importantly, who you know well enough to help succeed in return. This reciprocal web of professional relationships becomes increasingly valuable as your career progresses, often becoming the primary mechanism through which opportunities arrive. Research on career advancement consistently shows that networks matter enormously. Sociologist Mark Granovetter's famous study, The Strength of Weak Ties, found that most people find jobs through personal connections rather than formal applications, and paradoxically, through weak ties, acquaintances rather than close friends. The weak ties provide access to information and opportunities in different networks than your immediate circle, creating bridges to possibilities you wouldn't otherwise encounter. But building a valuable professional network is not what most people think it is. It's not collecting business cards at networking events. It's not accumulating LinkedIn connections. It's not transactional relationship building where you reach out only when you need something. That approach produces a large network that provides little actual value because the connections are shallow and the reciprocity is one-sided. A valuable network is built through genuine relationships formed by working together, solving problems together, learning from each other, and helping each other over time. Hence, these relationships are built on shared experience and demonstrated reliability. The colleague you delivered a hard project with, the mentor who invested time in your development, the person you helped solve a difficult problem, the collaborator whose work you admire and who admires yours. These are the relationships that create career value. The mechanism is simple. When someone in your network encounters an opportunity that requires capabilities you have, you're top of mind because they've seen your work firsthand, or they trust someone else who vouches for you. They reach out before the role is posted. They recommend you to decision makers. They create opportunities that never become publicly available. This is how senior level hiring actually works. Most positions are filled through networks before they are formally advertised. While building this kind of network requires long-term thinking, you're not networking for immediate benefit, but for relationships that compound over years. The junior colleague you mentor today might be hiring for a senior role you want in 5 years. The peer you collaborate with generously today might recommend you for a board position in 10 years. The person you help solve a problem today might introduce you to a client tomorrow. But you can't predict which relationships will create which opportunities, so you treat all relationships as potentially valuable. This means showing up consistently for your network, responding when people reach out, making introductions when you can help connect people, sharing useful information or opportunities, congratulating people on achievements, offering help without expecting immediate reciprocity. On these small acts of generosity accumulate into social capital that creates goodwill and obligation in the best sense. People want to help you because you've helped them. There's also the question of network diversity. Homogeneous networks, where everyone works in the same company, same industry, same city, same background, provide less value than diverse networks that span different contexts. The value of a network is partly in the information and opportunities it provides access to, and diverse networks provide access to more varied information and opportunities than homogeneous ones. Strategic network building means cultivating relationships across multiple dimensions. Industry peers who understand your domain. People in adjacent industries who can provide different perspectives. People more senior who can mentor and create opportunities. People more junior who bring fresh ideas and energy. People in different functional areas who can complement your expertise. People in different geographies who can open markets or contexts you don't have access to. Maintaining a network requires systems. When your network reaches a certain size, you cannot maintain all relationships through memory and spontaneous contact. Successful networkers use systems, regular check-ins, notes about conversations, reminders to reach out, categories for different types of relationships. This sounds mechanical, but the alternative is losing touch with valuable relationships because life is busy and maintaining relationships requires deliberate effort. There's also the distinction between strong ties and weak ties. With strong ties, close colleagues and collaborators provide deep trust, detailed knowledge of your capabilities, and willingness to go out of their way to help you. Weak ties, acquaintances, and second-degree connections provide breadth, access to different networks, and information about opportunities outside your immediate circle. Both are valuable. Strong ties provide depth and advocacy. Weak ties provide breadth and discovery. Network building also requires reputation. Your reputation determines whether people want to be in your network. If you're known as competent, reliable, and generous, people seek connection with you. If you're known as self-serving, unreliable, or difficult, people avoid you. Your reputation precedes you into potential relationships and determines whether they form and how valuable they become. One powerful network building strategy: become a connector. The person who thoughtfully introduces people who should know each other creates enormous value and goodwill. You're helping both parties while positioning yourself as someone with a valuable network and good judgment about connections. This costs you nothing but creates significant positive regard from everyone involved. Another strategy: contribute to communities. Whether industry associations, professional groups, online communities, or informal gatherings of practitioners in your field, active participation builds visibility and relationships simultaneously. The person who shows up consistently, shares knowledge, asks good questions, and helps solve problems becomes known within the community and builds a network organically through that participation. Almost network value also compounds through second-order effects. Your networks become accessible through introduction. The colleague who can't help you directly might know someone who can. The more trusted relationships you have, the more second-degree connections become available when needed. This is why the strength of ties matters. Strong ties are willing to make introductions and put their own reputation behind recommending you. Finally, networks require reciprocity. If you only reach out when you need something, relationships atrophy. If you consistently provide value, information, introductions, help, support, relationships strengthen. The best networkers are givers who help others succeed without keeping score, trusting that generosity compounds into goodwill that creates long-term value. One, your network is a career asset that appreciates over time. Build it deliberately, maintain it consistently, use it generously, and watch opportunities emerge that you never would have accessed alone. Chapter 10: Becoming Indispensable. The long game of career mastery. Indispensability is not about making yourself impossible to replace through hoarding information or creating dependencies. That's fragile and short-sighted. True indispensability comes from being so valuable through rare skills, consistent excellence, strategic judgment, and relationship capital that replacing you would be extraordinarily costly and difficult, even though the organization could theoretically do so. This is the long game. It's not built in months or even a couple of years. It's built through decades of deliberate skill development, reputation building, relationship cultivation, and strategic positioning. The person who becomes genuinely indispensable has created such a strong compound of value across multiple dimensions that no single replacement could provide equivalent benefit. The foundation is deep expertise, not competence, expertise. The level of knowledge and skill in your domain where you can solve problems others cannot, see patterns others miss, make judgments others trust, and produce work at a quality others cannot match. This expertise comes from years of deliberate practice, continuous learning, and application in varied contexts. It cannot be acquired quickly, which is precisely what makes it valuable, but expertise alone is insufficient. The indispensable combine deep expertise with broad competence. They understand not just their narrow domain, but how it connects to other parts of the business. The engineer who understands product and market dynamics is more valuable than the engineer who only understands code. The designer who understands business strategy is more valuable than the designer who only understands aesthetics. This breadth makes you more than a specialist. It makes you someone who can operate at the intersection of domains where the most valuable problems exist. There's also the dimension of institutional knowledge. Over time in an organization, you accumulate understanding of how things actually work. Not how they're supposed to work according to org charts and process documents, but how decisions actually get made, where political landmines exist, what's been tried before, and why it failed, who the real influencers are. This tacit knowledge is extraordinarily difficult to transfer and makes you valuable as both executor and advisor. The indispensable are also culture carriers. They embody the values and standards the organization wants to maintain. They mentor newer employees. They set examples through their work ethic, quality standards, and professional behavior. They're the people that leadership points to as exemplars of what the organization aspires to be. This cultural role creates value beyond any specific project or deliverable. Relationship capital makes you indispensable through network effects. If you've built strong relationships with key clients, important partners, or critical internal stakeholders, your departure would disrupt those relationships and potentially endanger the business value they represent. And this is not about holding relationships hostage. It's about having genuinely earned trust and rapport with people important to organizational success. There's also the multiplier effect. The truly indispensable make everyone around them better. They develop talent, they improve team performance, they create leverage through their presence. Removing them doesn't just lose one person's output, it decreases the output of everyone they work with. This multiplier effect is visible in team performance before and after such people join or leave. Strategic judgment is another dimension of indispensability. The person whose recommendations consistently prove right, who can navigate ambiguous situations, who can balance competing priorities wisely, one who can see around corners that others can't, that person becomes invaluable in leadership and advisory capacities. This judgment is built through experience, mistakes, learning, and reflection over many years. Becoming indispensable also requires understanding what the organization actually values, which is not always what it claims to value. Some organizations value innovation, others value stability, some value revenue growth at any cost, others value sustainable profitability. The person who understands what leadership actually cares about and delivers against those priorities becomes indispensable because they're aligned with what matters most to decision makers. There's also the question of timing and positioning. You become most indispensable when you're working on the organization's most important initiatives, how solving its most expensive problems or protecting its most critical capabilities. Being excellent at something peripheral is less valuable than being very good at something central. Strategic positioning means understanding where the organization is heading and ensuring your capabilities align with that trajectory. Paradoxically, becoming indispensable requires making yourself replaceable in the right ways. The person who hoards all knowledge and won't delegate becomes a bottleneck. The person who documents their work, trains others, and builds systems that don't depend on them personally creates leverage that makes them more valuable, not less. Organizations want people who can scale themselves through others, not people who create single points of failure. Indispensability also requires adaptability. The skills and capabilities that made you valuable 5 years ago might not be what the organization needs going forward. The person who can evolve their expertise, learn new domains, and apply their judgment to new contexts maintains value across organizational changes that make others obsolete. Adaptability is itself a form of career capital. There's also the reality that indispensability is relative and contextual. You might be indispensable in one organization and easily replaceable in another because of how your specific capabilities align with specific organizational needs. This is why understanding fit matters as much as developing capability. The goal is not to be universally indispensable, but to be indispensable in contexts where your specific form of excellence is highly valued. And the long game of becoming indispensable is not about job security in the sense of never being able to be let go. It's about having accumulated so much value across skills, reputation, relationships, and judgment that you have extraordinary leverage and optionality. If you leave, you're easily hired elsewhere. If you stay, you're compensated well and given autonomy because replacing you would be costly. This is not dependence, it's leverage. Focus on the long game. Build expertise that compounds. Develop judgment through experience. Cultivate relationships through generosity. Create value through excellence. Do this consistently for years and watch yourself become not just employable, but invaluable. Someone too good to lose and too difficult to replace. Imagine yourself 5 years from now. You have spent those years deliberately building career capital. Every role you chose prioritized learning over short-term comfort. Every project you took on developed rare and valuable skills. Every difficult problem you solved added to your reputation. Every relationship you cultivated with genuine generosity strengthened your network. Every piece of work you produced met the standard of excellence you set for yourself. 5 years of this adds up to something extraordinary. Not because any single day was remarkable, but because the compound effect of consistent, strategic effort produces results that seem impossible from the starting line. You are now genuinely expert in domains that matter. You can solve problems that most people cannot. Your judgment has been refined through experience and feedback. You understand not just how to do the work, but why certain approaches succeed and others fail. You can operate at levels of complexity and ambiguity that would have paralyzed you 5 years ago. Your reputation precedes you. When your name comes up in conversations, people associate it with quality, reliability, and expertise. Former colleagues recommend you enthusiastically. Your work speaks for itself through a portfolio of successful projects and solved problems. You no longer need to convince people of your capabilities. The evidence is abundant and widely known. Your network has become a professional asset that creates opportunities continuously. People reach out about roles you'd be perfect for. Collaborators want to work with you on important projects. Mentees and colleagues you've helped along the way return the favor with introductions and recommendations. Your weak ties provide access to opportunities in networks you don't directly participate in. Your strong ties advocate for you in rooms you're not in. The practical manifestation of all this capital is leverage. You have options. When recruiters reach out, you can evaluate opportunities from a position of strength rather than desperation. When negotiating compensation, you have proof of value that justifies premium rates. When considering roles, you can be selective about fit, culture, and growth potential because you are not forced to take the first available option. You also have autonomy. Organizations compete for your time rather than you competing for their attention. You can set boundaries around how you work. You can decline projects that don't align with your goals. You can shape your role around your strengths. You have earned the right to work on your own terms because you've made yourself too valuable to lose over those terms. Perhaps most significantly, you have impact. The work you do matters. The problems you solve are expensive and important. The decisions you influence shape organizational direction. The people you mentor go on to accomplish significant things. You can see the concrete results of your effort, not just in your own advancement, but in the value you've created for others. None of this required exceptional talent, fortunate circumstances, or lucky breaks. It required strategic thinking about skill development, commitment to excellence, deliberate relationship building, and sustained effort over time. It required choosing the hard path when the easy path was available. It required investing in capabilities that compound rather than cashing in capital for short-term gains. The alternative trajectory, the one where those 5 years pass without strategic career capital accumulation, looks very different. 5 years of choosing comfort over growth. 5 years of doing adequate work without pushing for excellence. 5 years of building no meaningful skills, relationships, or reputation. The result is employable but not valuable, busy but not advancing, working but not building anything that lasts. The time will pass either way. 5 years from now, you will be somewhere. The only question is whether you'll be in a stronger position than you are today, with more options, more leverage, and in more capability, or in roughly the same position, perhaps slightly more senior, but fundamentally unchanged in terms of what you can do and what you're worth. That difference between deliberate capital accumulation and passive career drift is entirely within your control. It comes down to the choices you make starting today. Not what job you have right now, not what credentials you already possess, not what circumstances you're in. The choices about where you focus your development energy, what standards you hold yourself to, how you treat your professional relationships, and whether you're building something that compounds. Making yourself too valuable to ignore is not about becoming famous, powerful, or extraordinarily wealthy, though any of those might follow. It's about building a professional life where you have agency, somewhere your work matters, where you're compensated fairly for the value you create, and where you have the freedom to shape your career around your strengths and priorities rather than simply accepting whatever opportunities randomly appear. This is available to you right now, today, not when circumstances are better, not when you have more time, not when you're more prepared. Now, because career capital is built through the accumulation of small decisions, and every day presents dozens of opportunities to make decisions that either build capital or deplete it. Choose the project that develops skills over the one that's easy. Choose the manager who will push you over the one who will let you coast. Choose the feedback that's harsh but accurate over the praise that feels good but teaches nothing. Choose the relationship building that's generous over the networking that's transactional. Choose excellence over adequacy. Choose growth over comfort. Make these choices consistently, not perfectly. You will make mistakes and sometimes choose the wrong path, but directionally over time, pointed toward capital accumulation rather than capital depletion. The compound effect will take care of the rest. 5 years from now, when you look back at today, you'll either thank yourself for starting or regret that you didn't. The choice is yours. Make yourself too valuable to ignore. Start now.